Well, welcome to the Cloudreach Windows 2008 and SQL 2008 End of Sale webinar. My name is Jeff Deverter, and I am the CTO of the Microsoft practice here at Cloudreach. And today I'm going to walk you through a little presentation. That presentation is going to deal with a topic that nobody's been very happy to talk about because there's still a whole lot of Windows 2008 and SQL 2008 running out in the wild, and it's about to lose its security updates from Microsoft. And that's not very exciting. So today I want to walk you through a few items. And the first is I want to talk about how we got here. How did we get to where there are thousands upon thousands of Windows 2008 and SQL 2008 servers that are still out there on an operating system and in a database environment that is 11 years old? I want to talk about what some of the options for fixing that situation are. And then we're going to talk about, should your decision be to move out into Azure, what are some of the things that you have to think about? What are some of the benefits of making that move? And what are some of the ways that you need to give consideration to how to make that actually happen? All right, so how did we get here? Let's first talk about the Microsoft product lifecycle. But in reality, this could be any software company that gets put into here, because it's not necessarily right to throw rocks at a company who says, hey, our 11-year-old thing is going to not get any more support, because they've moved on actually several times into newer versions of these operating systems and of SQL. So in any company, and in Microsoft specifically, this new coding project goes into development, and it's going to pick up a code name. In the case of Windows and SQL, we have Longhorn Server and Kilimanjaro, where their original code names. And it's going to go through some developer previews, some beta releases, release candidates, and ultimately get released out into the wild. Now, once it gets released, there's always bugs. There are always feature enhancements that come along while it's still a thing. And these come in the form of service packs and updates. And then at some point, there's going to be an end of those service packs. And that's the end of technical updates. And then after that passes by, you get to a point of the end of security updates. And that's actually where we are today, or in a few months is where we're going to be, because Takeshi announced to us about, well, not quite a year ago, back in July of last year, that there would be the end of support for SQL and for Windows coming in July of this year, 2019. And then for SQL, it's January 14th of 2020. So we've known about this for a while. We knew in our gut it was coming, and we know now officially when these dates are. And so they are things that we have to deal with. It's an issue that we have to deal with. There are so many of these servers running out in the wild, and there are terabytes upon terabytes of customer and company data running in SQL 2008 that need a new home, that need a strategy. Well, what are the options that exist for us in moving forward? Well, these options are, first of all, to do nothing. You could actually do nothing. You could extend the security support by writing Microsoft a check. You could upgrade these applications on premises. You could lift and shift them out into Azure, which, as we'll find out, looks an awful lot like extending security. Or you could actually transform out into the cloud. So let's look at these options in depth, shall we? All right, first, the do-nothing approach. So the do-nothing approach has the pros of, well, doing nothing. And what could be easier than doing nothing? So it takes no effort on your part, no planning on your part. You just let the clock go by, and you let security not be an issue for you. The cons of this is security is really a big issue. Cyber attacks are getting increasingly more sophisticated and frequent. And there are no targets that are wider than these older applications, because the threats that exist today did not exist back when these apps were being written. Let's look at some of the painful statistics, or just a few of them maybe. You see, in the first half of 2018, over 5 billion records were stolen. Those records came in the form of customer data, of company data, financial data, personal information. All the stuff we didn't want out there was out there. These thefts are happening at such a greater frequency that it pretty much shows up in my daily news feed each day, each week, each month. And then if you were to look out in the future a little bit, by 2024, it is expected that there will be $8 trillion worth of real financial loss because of cybersecurity attacks. And so hopefully this is impressing upon you, the fact that doing nothing, while it is an option, Shouldn't be an option to you. So if that's not the road you're going to go down, let's talk about what else you could do. So the next and the easiest of things to do list would be extending security for a few years. But you say, Jeff, Mr. Fancy CTO of the Microsoft practice at Cloudreach, you told me that it was the end of security. That's right. That's the end of free security. You could actually write a check to Microsoft and get 3 more years of security patches from them. They are making you write a check in a way to hopefully dissuade you from running these old servers and these old server apps in the form of SQL. So the pros to this is, well, you're still pretty much doing nothing other than writing a check. You get to kick the can down the road a little bit farther. The cons to this is you're spending money on something you shouldn't be spending money on. There's no ROI in doing this. You're dedicating resources to an antiquated way of doing things, and you're still going to have to deal with modernization at some point, because even though you can write a check to Microsoft today, they're still only letting you extend it for, I think, up to about 3 years. So you're going to have to deal with this at some point. All right, so option number 1, do nothing. Option number 2, write a check, like we've talked about, still pretty much doing nothing. And then option number 3, upgrade on-prem. I don't hate this idea because at least you're getting off of the old stuff. And you do get some capabilities that quite frankly didn't exist in 2008. Some of those include you're getting access to Kubernetes, you're getting improved access to storage options, to Windows Defender, and even access to the Windows Admin Center, which is going to give you the ability to manage your resources in a larger way, in a better way than you can today. Your on-prem stuff, your off-prem stuff, really some decent opportunities there. The cons to this is it's not truly digital transformation. You're not really opening yourself up to the opportunities that exist out in the public cloud. It's costly. It is a Gartner number that says that each of those servers, those VMs that are running inside of your data center, costs about $4,600 a year to manage. $4,600 a year to manage from the infrastructure and from the people that it takes to run that. And the data centers that they run in, the power, the ping, the pipe, all of those things, $4,600. Now that number, actually, I just mentioned it a minute ago as an annual number. It's a monthly number. It's painful. A one-size-fits-all approach. You're just going to upgrade everything. You're going to run it all in the data center. One-size-fits-all also means you still are scaling your environment for the peaks and not for the valleys, because there's no automation in these environments unless you've gone to some great extent to write something fancy. And it's still a legacy approach. It's how we've run data centers back since the mid-90s. It is not truly digital transformation. Now there's the lift and shift to Azure opportunity. Now lift and shift, let's define lift and shift. It means we're picking up these VMs that are running Windows 2008, VMs that are running SQL 2008, and putting them in Azure. Now when you do this, you're still running these older operating systems. But instead of you having to write a check to Microsoft that says, please give me more security updates, because they're running in Azure, they are actually going to give you 3 more years of updates. I wonder what they're trying to incent you to do. I think they want you to run inside of Azure. Now, the pros of this is it gives you options. Options. What do you mean it gives you options? You told me we're lifting and shifting, Jeff. Well, yes, it does give you the option that. But once you're there, you can actually start to modernize. It kind of releases some of the pressure cooker that you're in, especially if you've got some SQL 2008. Remember, you only have a few months until that becomes out of support from a security perspective. But if you lift that stuff over out into Azure and you run there, you actually take the pressure off to do the security updates, but you ideally are very quickly going to move into a transformation type of an activity and start to either upgrade that database environment to a more modern environment, or ideally then even out into something that's more PaaS related. You do pick up the 3 years of support. You pick up the auto-scaling capabilities. Let's say that your Windows Server estate needed to run for a specific server application, needed 30 servers to handle the peaks. Well, when you are out inside of Azure, you have the ability to scale on demand. You have capacity on demand, which means you can keep it down for the valley, and you can write rule sets, you can enable rule sets that will auto-scale that environment as you need it. And of course, there's cost benefits to running out there. You don't have to manage the server. You're not managing the data center. You're not having to deal with a lot of that stuff. And the cost benefits, of course, going back also to capacity on demand. Now, the cons to this is a move that's actually quite involved. It's a 3-stage move from an analysis and a move and a lift and shift and getting everything running out inside of Azure. It's a lot of effort. You do have to deal with new management tools once you're out there. Because you are running VMs out inside of Azure, you're having to deal with some new management tools. Moving a database server actually adds complexity when you move them out into Azure, because now you're enabling VMs out inside of Azure. You've got the SQL environment running inside of there. And then the most important thing is a migration. It's not a strategy. It's not a strategy. A migration is a real estate change. It's moving something from one location to another. It's not a digital transformation strategy, unless it's part of a broader strategy that says, I'm going to lift and shift them out there. I'm going to take myself out of the pressure cooker of having to deal with dealing with this end of sale, end of support event, and then very quickly have a fast follow into the transformation activities. All right, so since we said transformation, let's talk about that last and fifth option, and that is to transform out into the cloud. The pros, this is a strategy. This is you picking your stuff up and transforming it along the way, taking not a VM, not taking a server, but you're actually picking up application by application and putting them into new technologies inside of the cloud. You're future-proofing yourself because your strategy is a cloud-based strategy. And as the cloud evolves underneath you, you're prepared to deal with that because you've built a strategy around that. You have a wide-open tool set. The opportunities are virtually endless. I mean, if you've been running SQL 2008 for the past 11 years, you have an endless amount of capabilities to adopt out inside of Azure, especially as you even start to get close to what those capabilities are today. By the time you get there, there'll be 15 or 100 new ones underneath you. So they're constantly evolving underneath. And it's all about the data. Once you have your servers and your applications running out inside of Azure, you're going to have access to insights and capabilities that you never had access to before, from a logging perspective, from an analysis perspective, not just dealing with how those applications are physically running, but dealing with the metadata that you can collect around them. And then all of the data that they're collecting and storing from an application perspective, you can now start to collate and pull together and really start to do some things that are very interesting to you and to your business. And do what I've often said for the past, how many years, and that is a move out into the cloud is done specifically because it gives you access to these tools and capabilities and allows you to have a tool set that gives you a strategic advantage over your competitors. Very powerful stuff when you think about it. All right, cons. Transformation is hard. I'm not going to lie. Transformation is hard. It's new effort. It's new muscles. This is something you obviously haven't been doing for a while, but it's okay. But now you're going to go do it. But they're new muscles that you have to go and build. Transformation is a commitment. It's not something you do and now you set and forget. Transformation is the new way you do IT. Transformation is part of a larger enterprise strategy, which means you're going to have to go talk to more people inside of your organization around how this is going to materialize inside of the domain of IT in your larger enterprise. And there'll be changes to your native tooling and the way that you support things. The way you support cloud native applications is, quite frankly, very different than the way you manage a VM or a physical server inside of your data center. And we need to figure out ways to incorporate that into the way you do business today. Are you going to be a managed service provider for your applications, or is that something else that you're going to quote unquote outsource, just as you're outsourcing the management of your compute and your storage and your networking out into Azure? These are things that you have to think about. These are things we have to create around. All right. Unfortunately, though, we are working up against a deadline. And that deadline is the end of sale event happening in July this year of 2019 and of January 2020. And it's time to do something. Well, as you think about this transformation, as you think about this move out into Azure, what are some of the things that you're going to need to be aware of? You see, Windows workloads by the numbers actually gives us some very interesting statistics. 49% of Windows Server costs are wrapped up in people. People patching, people backing up, people restoring, people managing the infrastructure, people managing the data center, people managing the power, the ping and the pipe that's coming in. And in fact, the cost for a Windows support person managing those Windows servers, $126,000 a year. When you think about they can manage about 60 or so Windows-based instances. These really start to add up when you think about some of the amount of these old servers running inside of data centers. 45% of the Windows server costs wrapped up in the hardware and the software. What if you could actually get rid of that or offload a lot of that out into the cloud? You actually can in the context of moving out into Azure. In fact, when you work with Cloudreach, we can actually help to reduce the total cost of ownership of these environments, at least conservatively, by 20% by moving out into Azure and utilizing a transformative type of a strategy that isn't going to take and move Windows servers and SQL servers, but it's going to move applications and data into the most appropriate environments. In some cases, that comes in the form of containers. In some cases, it's a serverless-based environment. In some cases, it's a platform as a services-based environment when we think about things like SQL or NoSQL database technologies inside of Azure. Now, we do this in 4 discrete phases. We do this through strategy and adoption. You wouldn't head out on a vacation and hope for the best. You want to go to Florida, you're going to point your car generally south and hope that you're going to make it there in a timely way. Not going to happen. You have a strategy around that. You know what the adoption strategy is. We're going to evaluate the way your business does business from a business perspective and from an IT perspective. We'll identify, and you should be identifying, what a target operating model looks like inside of the cloud, and establish a cloud center of excellence that has representation from not only IT, but actually out into the business as well. And then assess your operational readiness of how you're going to manage these things out inside of Azure. Next phase is assessing and plan. How much is running inside of your data center? How are they interconnected? And what's the appropriate plan to move these workloads and transform these workloads out into Azure? Then it's all about building and migrating, build that target environment from a security perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, from a networking perspective, from a logging and a DR perspective, getting the house set, getting the stage set inside of Azure. And then we're going to migrate your workloads, transform those workloads out into Azure. Once they're there, it's about operating and optimizing. In the old days, when you would get a new version of VMware or Hyper-V or a new Dell or HP server, you would go through great events to have a plan in place for how you would move into that environment. But once that all ultimately happened, you knew that for at least the next 3-ish years, that thing was going to trug along and be just fine, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. But now that you're out inside of Azure, once you've gone through that build and migrate mode, you're sitting on an engine that is constantly being upgraded by the cloud provider, Microsoft. New capabilities being added, existing ones being enhanced. And when we think about optimizing that environment, it's about thinking about how do you harness those new capabilities to the betterment of your applications, ultimately to the betterment of your business from a strategic perspective to win. That's what we're in business to do, and that's to win. And one of the key capabilities that we pick up in moving out into an environment that can be accessed completely through an application programming interface or an API, we now can handle automation. We can automate the assessment phase. We can automate the build phase. We can automate the migration, and then automate, in large cases, a lot of the management. Now, we're not going to automate the optimization. When we think about the continuum of what you do when you move out into a cloud-based environment like Azure, is we want to leverage automation as much as humanly possible, so that those humans you used to have doing mundane tasks are thinking about, now that we have these tools, how do we optimize them for the future? We use software and we use automation as much as humanly possible through this whole process to take the pain and the scariness away of having to get these Windows and SQL 2008 servers out of your data centers and into an environment that is, 1, supported, and then 2, gives you the potential from a tool set and a capability perspective to have an edge up against your competitors. When we think about that from a flowchart of approach, it's about using Cloudamize, a native capability that we have here inside of Cloudreach to do assessment and planning. And then it's about software and it's about people handling the move out into Azure. If we're just lifting and shifting, you better believe there's going to be an awful lot of automation that's getting that lift and shift out there. If we're talking about transformation, you're talking to a highly skilled ninja-based team, a small team that's going to come in and work with your business and with your IT folks to understand what those applications are supposed to be doing and how to make them function better, faster, cheaper with more capabilities inside of Azure. And we'll transform that work out into Azure. So that event that was scary, that we were really concerned about, that we've actually kicked the can down the road for a long time because there are literally tens and hundreds of thousands of these servers running in the wild, actually creates an opportunity for you. It gives you the opportunity to have a cloud-based infrastructure that's in your region, where you're doing business or where your customers are, that fits your business. It's also about being able to utilize modern infrastructure tools and tool sets. You now aren't worried about necessarily what the older features were or having to write new capabilities to make Windows 2008 do the thing you wanted it to do. Now you're sitting inside of Azure where there are literally hundreds of capabilities from a compute perspective, around a data and analysis perspective, and then around a networking perspective that can actually make your data and your application sing and provide more value than you could have had before. Another benefit of doing this is you're now in a modern environment. You're now being able to handle automated builds. Those automated builds now are actually become a key part of your DR strategy. If automation and scripts build your cloud-based environment and back up your data, well then if you need to redeploy into a new environment, automation handles that. And it does it in a very extremely consistent way. And then you now have a path to a continuous improvement and modernization. Remember what I mentioned back at the beginning of this, that moving to the cloud is actually adopting a transformative lifestyle. It's about modernization, a continuous path of modernization, not a 3-year cycle of patches. It's about a near daily analysis of the capabilities that exist inside of Azure compared to the needs that your business have and just connecting the dots. And that those capabilities that exist inside of Azure are literally changing on a daily basis underneath your feet. The results, cost savings, opportunity, and innovation. This is the capability that exists when you think about going out into Azure. So remember with me for a second when we started this little conversation and we were talking about Windows 2008 and SQL 2008 end of sale. Not very interesting, not very exciting. We've kicked the can down the road because we don't want to upgrade servers. Pure and simple. But now I want to talk to you and realize after we've had this whole conversation that it's not about just kicking the can down the road. It's about cost savings, it's about opportunity, and it's about innovation. And the recipient of these benefits, is your company. And they will be realized through greater operational efficiency and a strategic advantage against your customers. So I hope we've demystified a little bit of the issues with this end of sale event and cast a favorable light on why moving out into Azure is a very good idea for you and for your company. So again, my name is Jeff Deverter. I'm the CTO of the Azure Practice here at Cloudreach. I can be reached at Microsoft at cloudreach.com. You can also find me, look down there, right down there. There's my email. Feel free to email me at any point if you have any questions. Be happy to answer your questions. So either send it to Microsoft at cloudreach.com or jeff.deverter at cloudreach.com, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. So good luck on your adventure. If you want to have a quick consultation, again, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, the clock is ticking, and it's time to handle some modernization and some upgrades. So thank you very much for spending the last 23 or so minutes with me. Have a great day, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.